Okay, we'll start the webinar now. Welcome. My name is Jack Himes, and I'm with the Pennsylvania Recycling Market Center. And I welcome you to the CDRA 2014 Spring Webinar Update. During today's webinar, anyone in the audience may type in a question into the control panel question block, and you should see that on your screen. This webinar will be recorded and will be available by late next week, and we'll send further information to you about how to access that recording if you or somebody who couldn't make it today wants to view it. At this point, I'm going to turn the webinar over to Larry Holly, Division Chief, Waste Minimization and Planning at the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection. And Larry will have 20 minutes to give you an update on the status of the CDRA. Larry?
Thanks to everyone for joining us today, and a special thanks to the RMC for continuing to be an integral part of our implementation of the Covered Device Recycling Act. Today, I would like to review the calendar year 2013 program implementation and discuss our expectations and guiding principles for calendar year 2014. First and foremost, as always, I'd like to make myself, Georgia Cagle, and Jeff Bednar available to you at all times via phone or email if you have any questions, concerns, or would just like to speak regarding the Covered Device Recycling Act. Our phone number is 717-787-7382, and we'll be sharing that information again. With regards to the first year full implementation, the most notable occurrence in calendar year 2013 was the implementation of the landfill ban. This event drastically changed the landscape of e-waste recycling in Pennsylvania. There were several parties impacted by the Covered Device Recycling Act: 12 million Pennsylvanians, more than 2,600 local governments, more than 50 e-waste recyclers, a multitude of nonprofits, and approximately 59 OEMs who are actively participating in the Commonwealth's program. There's a couple of things I'd like to highlight that we learned right away with regards to 2013 implementation. Contracting by local governments, nonprofits, recyclers, and OEMs. In these contracts, all the parties invested in these contracts need to make sure they clearly understand the terms of their contracts, and they are in a financial manner that supports the program and the extent of the program that the local government, nonprofit, or recycler wants to collect. Understand what you're contracting for, the terms of those contracts, and how long it should last. That's a very important lesson learned as we move forward. Secondly, one of the things that wasn't such a bright thing in 2013 was Pennsylvania became host to one of the largest CRT glass piles in the country, Eco International in Halstead, Pennsylvania. Approximately more than 24 million pounds of CRT glass was left at that site. One of the lessons that we learned and some of the questions we need to ask about that site is, why didn't the material get recycled? Did the certification process fail? How does this recycling facility relate to the manufacturer's plans it was in, as it was in several manufacturers' plans, and it did not get recycled? It's still there on the ground and being removed. Those are some of the questions we have and lessons we need to learn. Now I would like to spend a little bit of time giving some highlights on the OEM programs that we had for 2013. We had 58 OEMs obligated to recycle in calendar year 2013. 36 of those had a goal of 50% and did exactly 50%, equating to 63% of the total. 9 did no recycling or came up short of their goal. Two of the shortfalls are either buying recycled pounds from 2013 or paying the fee. Two were slightly over 50%. The next fact is 49 of the 57, or 86% of the OEMs, did the minimum or less. 8, however, significantly exceeded the 50% required. I will mention them a little bit later. 2 recycled and reported that weren't even obligated to implement programs. 2 OEMs, in fact, submitted their annual reports for 2013 in early September of 2013. It's interesting how you could submit your reports and the calendar year is not over. Now on to some good news about the Covered Device Recycling Act. Some outstanding companies that are noteworthy of mention. Apple far exceeded 100% goal. Best Buy recycled well beyond their goal to the tune of many, many hundreds of thousands of pounds. IBM did a lot more than their goal. JVC had a goal of 100% and exceeded it. NEC set a goal of 100% and exceeded it. Samsung went several 100,000 pounds above their goal. Vox went over 150% of a goal. And Westinghouse exceeded their goal significantly. Those are highlights of the year that we'd like to give kudos to those companies for their outstanding work. Next, I'd like to move on into some of the issues that happened in 2013. One of the big issues was manufacturers stopped paying for the cost of collection, transportation, and recycling once their goals were met. This directly correlates to a couple of significant issues. An undetermined amount of local governments had to cancel their programs. Materials sat at some collection sites and recyclers for extended periods of time. Recyclers were stuck with millions of pounds of covered devices. In fact, we asked the RMC to do a small survey of a few Pennsylvania recyclers to ascertain a portion of that number. And that small survey revealed 6.5 million pounds were not covered by manufacturers' programs and left over. Now, that's not an all-inclusive number, but that gives a snapshot of some of the materials that were left out there. We also learned from our surrounding neighbors, New Jersey in particular, that they had experienced the same problem with manufacturers' programs being stopped and cut through the year, and how it had impacted their local governments, nonprofits, and some of their recyclers. Those are some of the issues that happened in 2013. What I'd like to do now is talk about CRTs. We all know CRTs are an issue nationwide and worldwide. The one thing that we need to all recognize is there's a real cost to the recycling of CRTs, and pennies on the pound will not pay for the cost of collection, transportation, and recycling of it. Access to CRT recycling is available to some degree, depending on who you are, the amount you have, and it costs. And that is a realization that we all must make and understand. This CRT recycling is not unique to Pennsylvania. As I said earlier, it's a global issue. It's definitely a nationwide issue in the United States. When it comes to CRT recycling, the one thing that the department would encourage everybody to do is be diligent in choosing your recycler and follow up on them on a regular basis. Know where your materials are going. That creates a safety net and avoids problems growing too large. Also, as we look forward to more collections in calendar year 2014, there's another realization that CRTs continue to be a large portion of the collections, in some cases between 60 and 90%. That's significant. The one good reality about CRTs is ultimately this problem will disappear over the next few years, approximately 5 to 7 is projected by many, and we won't have to worry about it any longer. Those are some of the things that happened in 2013 and the highlights. Now I'd like to move on to calendar year 2014 and give some information on our guiding principles, what our expectations are, and to reiterate and clearly articulate what we want for the citizens of Pennsylvania, our expectations of the recyclers and the OEMs. We think that it's based on a partnership approach between all those parties to get the job done. And we are going to work with RMC diligently to create venues and opportunities for the impacted parties to get together, talk about their problems, understand the concerns, and work collectively towards a common theme of ensuring all Pennsylvanians have free, convenient access to e-waste recycling. As we move on, we understand that this is a dynamic process and it's going to continue to change throughout the year. Therefore, we will continue to solicit information from all those that are impacted. And I'm going to start now with 2014, the overarching guiding theme, and what will make the department confident and happy that the program is working well. And that simple concept is that all of the collection events and collection sites and manufacturers programs operate throughout the year and cover the materials coming into their program. That is ultimately what makes the department happy and have a good understanding that it's working well. The goal is 100% of the sales data, and that is a goal. We understand that there's concerns about that goal and how it's going to work. We also learned that from last year, when you set a goal, that's what people will do. And we think that people can strive towards that 100%, and it'll ultimately lead us where we want to be, that all the material collected is recycled in a responsible manner, and there's no stockpiles remaining in the Commonwealth. Some would ask, what happens if there's not enough material collected in that calendar year? Well, on a case-by-case basis, the department would look at those plans if they did come up short of 100% and ascertain why they did and what were the specific circumstances to those shortages. In fact, if there's not 100% available, we would be understanding of that. But for sure, everyone can understand if someone does 50% or 60%, and at the end of the year we find many millions of tons stockpiled again, that there wasn't a good faith effort. We want to ensure that everybody puts forth their best effort to move ahead. And that effort comes not only from OEMs, but it comes from collectors, recyclers, and local governments. If there's not proper funding for an event, then a local government should not be having an event, a nonprofit shouldn't have an event, and then be concerned later about not being able to manage it. If you're not working with an OEM or a recycler who's in an OEM plan, then maybe you want to think twice about doing a program if you can't afford it. We think it's a joint responsibility, and cooperation are the success or the key to making this program successful. That is why we continue to say, communicate again and again and again amongst the impacted parties is the key to success. We don't want material stockpiled, and we're taking efforts to alleviate that. In fact, in calendar year 2013, we gave recyclers the opportunity who came up short of their goal to go back and purchase that tonnage that was left over in order to avoid the penalty. If that was the case to happen again in 2014, we would let them have that opportunity again. But from a planning perspective, we think it inappropriate that someone would plan to wait to the last minute and go buy it, and then it might not be available. So that wouldn't be a good plan, and those wouldn't be circumstances that were conducive to a good faith effort. At the end of the day, we believe that enforcement is not the key to this program. The key is cooperation amongst the impacted parties, good contracting, and a continued dialogue throughout the year. We plan to have a September 12th meeting to get everyone together, a meeting or a webinar, whichever we deem appropriate at the time, to take a snapshot and find out where we are. The RMC and DEP will be working throughout the year to gather information prior to that meeting. So if there are problems brewing and there are other issues that need to be talked about or conquered, or we need a change of course, we're able to do that in an intelligent, informed manner. We believe information and communication are the key to being successful. Without those things, we won't do it. At the end of the day, we like to reiterate, those materials collected at our programs, i.e. the plans contained in there, the collection events and the programs contained in manufacturers' programs need to be serviced. And those recyclers who are part of those plans and those local governments need to work cooperatively and communicate. And the cost of those programs need to be covered by the OEMs. In some cases, we learned that OEMs costs were not covering the programs, and local governments or nonprofits were being stuck with a large deficit on their program. I don't know that that's anyone's fault, but I think it might have been a lack of communication as to what the actual costs throughout the year for those programs were. And now with understanding the impact of CRTs on collection events, I think there can be a better contract negotiation going on. Another thing we would like to add is that working cooperatively with the RMC, they're going to develop a tool that will allow us to track the location of sites and collection points throughout the year, and also track tonnages that are available for recycling to further assist the OEMs in meeting their goals. We too are a partner in the solutions to the issue surrounding the CDRA. Lastly, I would like just a few more comments before we take questions. I would like to say that we continue to work hard, we continue to communicate with everybody that's impacted, and we recognize the importance of each impacted party's contribution to the solution, and we will always listen to them. We are poised to react if need for a change should arise. So don't think for 1 minute we're sitting on our hands. We're closely monitoring this situation, and if a change of course needs to be enacted, we're ready. With that said, I'm going to turn it back to Jack. We're going to take questions. Thank you for your time. We look forward to hearing from you even more.
Thank you, Larry. Now, at this point, we'd like to accept questions from the audience. And again, if you want to submit a question, you can type it into your GoToWebinar control panel. There should be a section that says questions, and you can open that up and type in your question. So we've got a couple of questions here. Let's take a look at them. I'll read the question aloud and Larry will provide an answer. Can we really expect the CRT problem to disappear within 5 to 7 years? Lifespan still is well over 12 years for CRT units.
I think with regards to the CRT, we're seeing a large increase in the amount of CRTs that are being offered for recycling, and we're seeing people start to close out their houses. The old monitors from the desktops are starting to go away, and we feel that within 5 to 7 years this will start to dissipate. I would also, at this point, I left out one thing I wanted to add, and clearly, if an OEM meets their goal of 100%, then they are in compliance with the CDRA. The department would strongly encourage them to continue those programs throughout the year. But once you've met the goal, there's no expectation to exceed it. We do want to strongly encourage you to continue your program throughout the year.
Okay, next question. Are there still OEMs interested in buying unsold weight from 2013? I believe there are. We have distributed information about where OEMs can find excess 2013 pounds that are still available. And I don't have a final answer yet if all those OEMs have taken action on it yet, but my understanding is that's still a work in progress and may continue up until the end of this month. All right, next question. Do you have any idea when New Life will obtain the clean air permit? Yeah, that's referring to New Life Glass from United Kingdom, who is in the process of negotiating. My understanding is an air permit and perhaps other items with New York State. So none of us in this room really have definitive detail to answer that question. Next question. What leverage do recyclers have to negotiate a price with Oems that covers the real cost of recycling CRTs? Will DEP consider a floor on OEM charges for CRTs if the open market is not resolving the imbalance between the cost of recycling CRTs and the OEM fees being offered?
With regards to the cost of recycling and the fees negotiated between the impacted parties, the department will not insert itself into those negotiations. This is part of the free market system. We would expect that those in the business would be able to negotiate prices to cover their actual cost. Because, from our perspective, if I'm not able to create a financial business model that works, I wouldn't be collecting covered devices. So again, DEP is not involved with any price setting or any negotiations of fees and costs between the impacted parties.
Next question. You understand that CRTs cannot be safely recycled for pennies per pound. How will DEP ensure a fair market value that covers the true cost of CRT processing? Same question.
It's the same answer I just stated. If your business model has to support your cost to collect and manage those CRTs, the agency is not involved in setting prices or negotiating contracts on behalf of any of the parties. So we would say we live in the United States and it's a capitalistic society, and come up with a model that works and you can make money.
Okay, that's all the questions currently. Larry, do you have any other comments that you'd like to add to today's discussion?
I guess I would just like, to reiterate the agency's common goal, and that's to have free, convenient e-waste recycling for the residents of this Commonwealth. Beyond that, our interests are limited. We want the materials to be handled in a safe, environmentally protective way, but that's the thing that we want to make sure happens. Last year, we also had an increase in the amount of open dumping because there weren't enough outlets for these materials, and the program wasn't there yet, and they were no longer being allowed to be landfilled. In fact, many people didn't understand that you can't put them in the trash. They were left at the curb and vandalized, where the yolks were taken from them and caused more problems. So I think that, we've learned a lot, and working together, we can come up with a solution to this problem.
Okay, another question. Can the business model for recycling CRTs under CDRA include fees to municipalities or customers to resolve this imbalance in the CRT market?
The answer to that quite clearly is no. In the CDRA law that we have in Pennsylvania, the cost to collect, transport, and recycle these materials is to be borne by the OEMs. If an entity wants to participate in this arena and they're part of an OEM plan, they cannot charge. That is the way we've implemented it from day one. That's what we believe the law says. We have people that don't participate in OEM plans that are charging. That tonnage can't appear in any manufacturer's plan. So if somebody wants to charge for it, they probably should make sure that their recycler is not an OEM plan.
Next question. In under-collected areas, would a mailback option be viewed as a viable solution?
We have mailback programs that are being currently implemented. One of the things that we have to look at when we're assessing the coverage of the state is all the programs together, and are there options available together? Certainly, we have mailback programs that have been included, and the mailback programs don't typically get enough to support the goal. So it's a combination of efforts, events, programs, and mailback that usually works.
The next question. Free and convenient cannot happen under the current regime. Extraordinary downward pressure is placed on the value of the OEM credit, which drives it lower than the actual cost of processing. So free and convenient is impossible.
With regards to that comment, we believe that OEMs are doing a good job of getting programs out there that are free and convenient. It's those people that insert themselves in the marketplace that aren't in an OEM plan and try to deal with this cost. Those are the ones that are having problems. If you are working with an OEM, you should be negotiating a contract value that covers your cost for recycling all the things that you collect. As I stated earlier, right now, CRTs are comprising a large portion of those collection events and need to be accounted for. So if you're settling for pennies on the pound, then you probably not want to have those events. OEMs are the ones who are required to do these programs and make sure recycling in the Commonwealth is free and convenient, not those other entities that are implementing or choose to implement. If it's a business model, as many recyclers are doing, they figured out what their break even and their profit margins are. I suggest everybody in the business do that.
Next question. Is there a written DEP policy available on the issues of charging fees under the CDRA?
The covered device covers our position on charging fees. The Covered Device Recycling Act. If anybody wants to know what it says, we have copies available on our website, or we're happy to send you via email or fax or PDF the copy of that legislation.
What is the department's stance on using CRT glass as alternate daily cover in landfills?
The department does not consider, hold on a minute.
Bear with us just a minute.
Oh, yeah. I think both.
Consistent with the certifying entities and Pennsylvania law regarding what recycling is, the department does not consider the use of CRT glass as alternate daily cover in landfills recycling.
Yeah, Jack, do you want to address the R2 or E stewards? That they...
Yeah, a comment here in the room also is that recently both the R2 standard and the E-Steward standard publicized their position on alternate daily cover, and neither one is openly endorsing it, at least until there's no other viable option at all. And I refer you to the R2 Solutions website and also the BAN website or the E-Stewards standard website for further information. Next question. Clarification on the charge question. Can municipalities, haulers, and others who are not the direct consumer resident be charged?
No, because they pay taxes.
Residents cannot be charged for the recycling of covered devices in this Commonwealth.
As a, well, it says as a follow-on to the last question, I'm not sure which one that is referring to, but as a follow-on to the last question, this is explicitly not an open market solution, PA. By enacting CDRA is directly influencing the market, is it not?
There's not a real answer to that question. With regards to the Covered Device Recycling Act, it was enacted by the General Assembly and the other legislative bodies in this Commonwealth.
Is the department doing any enforcement or due diligence in making sure alternate daily cover is not being implemented by any OEM in the program?
With regards to where the materials are going, we they send to certified recyclers, and as long as those recyclers have the certification or maintain the certification, the department deems them to be compliant. And in fact, with the statement issued by the two certifying entities, we believe that that's an unacceptable practice, and those recyclers would lose their certification if found to be doing that.
Does the state have plans to weed out pseudo recyclers which are not third-party accredited?
We,
I'll just repeat.
I'm not sure of the question as to weed out, but in Pennsylvania, unlike some other states, we have a permitting process for those who are engaging in recycling. Anybody who's doing e-waste processing in this Commonwealth is required to get a residual waste permit from the bureau that I work within. So we don't believe that there's any pseudo recyclers operating. If in fact you have evidence that leads you to believe such, please let us know and we'll investigate. Okay.
Next question. Can the DEP provide a written statement as a follow-up to the position that Larry just articulated on alternate daily cover at MSW landfills? It would be helpful to have a written statement from the DEP.
There are many circumstances as to that follow that question, and I would be happy to talk to the author of that question via phone to understand the specifics of their inquiry.
Okay, that was quite a list of questions. We have another minute or two if anybody else has a question they'd like to submit. And if not, as Larry expressed, the department is always available to talk to individuals and clarify points, and will continue to be available. Okay, one more question, and let's make this the last question. To date, has DEP enforcement pulled any permits for previously certified recyclers under CDRA due? Not sure what that means at the end.
Well, I guess I could speak to a little bit. The certification process has nothing to do with our permitting process. When we found entities that required a permit for the activities they were participating in, we made them get a permit. those who've had violations of their permit were brought into compliance. We haven't shut anybody down with regards to enforcement issues. What we had to do is had some compliance adjustments, compliance assistance, and had some people who began to operate without a permit get into the process of getting a permit and eventually obtain a permit. And the certification has nothing to do with this Commonwealth.
Okay, thank you for your questions. We really appreciate it and your attentiveness to today's webinar. On behalf of Larry and other DEP folks in the room, I thank you for your attendance today. We will follow up with additional information about the recording of this webinar so that you or others can access it next week if you choose to do so. And we'll be back in touch with you about the next webinar or meeting as in September as determined going forward. Thanks again for your time and have a good day and a super weekend. Goodbye.